I used to think being frugal meant being cheap, that it meant saying no to everything fun, eating ramen every night and never enjoying life. I was completely wrong. The frugal habits I developed over the past decade didn't just save me money. They fundamentally changed my relationship with wealth and built a financial foundation I never imagined possible. Here's what nobody tells you about being frugal. It's not about deprivation. It's about intention. It's not about being cheap. It's about being smart. And the gap between what most people think frugality means and what it actually delivers is massive. I'm not talking about clipping coupons for hours to save $3. I'm talking about systematic habits that compound over years into real wealth. The kind of wealth that buys freedom, not just stuff. Let me walk you through the 8 frugal habits that changed everything for me, not theories I read in a book. Actual practices I implemented that transformed my financial life in ways I never expected. The first habit is the 72-hour rule for non-essential purchases. Simple concept, massive impact. If I want something that isn't immediately necessary, I wait 72 hours before buying it. That's it. 3 days between impulse and purchase. This single habit has saved me tens of thousands of dollars over the years. Here's what happens during those 72 hours. About half the time, I completely forget about the item. The desire evaporates. Whatever seemed essential on Tuesday feels irrelevant by Friday. That's impulse dying under scrutiny. The other half of the time, I still want the item after 3 days, but now I've had time to research it properly, compare prices across retailers, read reviews from people who have owned it for months, check if I can find it used, look for discount codes. By the time I purchase, I'm getting a better version of the product at a better price, or I've realized I don't actually need it at all. The 72-hour rule kills impulse buying. And impulse buying is where most people bleed money without realizing it. $20 here, $50 there, $100 on something that seemed perfect in the moment. Those purchases add up to thousands annually, spent on items that provide minimal lasting value. I started tracking this. In the first year of implementing the 72-hour rule, I avoided approximately $8,000 in purchases I would have made impulsively. Items I wanted desperately on Monday and didn't care about by Thursday. $8,000 that stayed invested instead of turning into clutter I'd eventually donate. That's not deprivation. That's clarity. The 72-hour rule doesn't stop me from buying things I genuinely want. It stops me from buying things I think I want in a moment of emotional reaction to marketing or social pressure or boredom. The second habit is cooking at home as the default, not the exception. I'm not talking about never eating out. I'm talking about making home cooking the baseline and restaurant meals the occasional choice rather than the constant convenience. When I calculated what I was spending on food delivery, restaurant lunches, and grabbing dinner because I was too tired to cook, the number shocked me. Nearly $800 per month. Almost $10,000 annually on food that wasn't even particularly good most of the time. I shifted the pattern. Meal planning on Sunday. Grocery shopping once per week. Batch cooking proteins and grains that could mix and match throughout the week. Suddenly, I was spending about $400 per month on groceries and eating better food. Healthier ingredients, larger portions, meals I actually enjoyed more than the mediocre takeout I'd been defaulting to. The savings were immediate. $400 per month, which is $4,800 per year. But the compounding is where it gets interesting. That $400 monthly difference, invested consistently over 10 years at an average 8% return, becomes roughly $73,000. $70, $3,000 from cooking at home instead of ordering delivery. That's not even accounting for the health benefits of controlling ingredients and portion sizes, which have their own financial impact through lower healthcare costs over time. Here's what surprised me most. Cooking at home didn't feel like sacrifice after the first month. It became enjoyable. A creative outlet, a way to decompress, a skill I got better at over time. I started actually looking forward to trying new recipes instead of scrolling through delivery apps looking at the same boring options. The restaurant meals I do have now feel special because they're intentional choices, not default convenience. I appreciate them more. I choose better restaurants. I'm not just grabbing whatever because I'm hungry and unprepared. This habit alone changed my relationship with money and food simultaneously. The third habit is buying quality items less frequently instead of cheap items constantly. This seems counterintuitive to frugality, but it's one of the most important shifts I made. I used to buy cheap shoes that wore out in 6 months, cheap kitchen tools that broke after a few uses, cheap furniture that fell apart and needed replacing. I thought I was saving money. I was actually spending more through constant replacement. I switched to a different approach. Research extensively. Buy quality once. Use it for years or decades. A $200 pair of quality leather boots lasts 5 years with proper care. That's $40 per year. 5 pairs of $50 cheap boots over the same period costs $250, and you've spent more time shopping, more time dealing with worn-out shoes, more time frustrated with poor quality. This pattern repeats across almost every category. Quality cookware lasts decades. Cheap pots and pans need replacing every few years. A well-made winter coat serves you for 10 years. Fast fashion falls apart in one season. Quality tools last a lifetime. Cheap tools break and frustrate you every time you use them. The math consistently favors buying quality less often. But there's a psychological component too. When you own fewer, better things, you appreciate them more. You take care of them. You're not constantly shopping for replacements. Your space isn't cluttered with mediocre items you don't really like. I now own probably half as many things as I did 10 years ago. But everything I own is something I genuinely like, and that serves its purpose well. The reduction in decision fatigue alone has been worth it. Less time shopping, less time organizing, less time dealing with broken or unsatisfactory items. The fourth habit is negotiating everything negotiable. Most people accept the first price they're given. I don't, at least not for significant purchases. This habit felt uncomfortable at first. I didn't want to seem cheap or difficult. Then I realized that businesses expect negotiation in many contexts, and leaving money on the table because I was too uncomfortable to ask was costing me thousands. I started with easy wins, calling my internet provider and asking what promotions were available. Saved $30 per month immediately. Calling insurance companies annually and asking if there were discounts I qualified for. Saved hundreds per year. Negotiating salary during job offers instead of accepting the first number. That single habit has been worth over $100,000 in additional lifetime earnings. Then I expanded to less obvious areas. Negotiating medical bills, especially when paying cash. Asking for discounts on furniture or appliances, particularly floor models or slightly damaged items. Negotiating rent renewals instead of accepting automatic increases. The pattern I discovered is simple. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. If you do ask, the answer is often yes, or at least opens a conversation that leads somewhere beneficial. I've negotiated lower interest rates on credit cards I was paying off, lower rates on car loans by shopping multiple lenders, better terms on contracts by actually reading them and questioning unfavorable clauses. The cumulative impact is difficult to calculate precisely, but conservative estimate is that negotiating has saved or earned me at least $50,000 over the past decade. $50,000 I would have left on the table if I'd been too uncomfortable to ask. Here's what changed my mindset. Businesses negotiate constantly. They negotiate with suppliers, with landlords, with service providers. Negotiation is normal in commerce. The only place it's considered rude is when individuals try to do it, and that's because it benefits businesses when consumers don't negotiate. Once I realized that accepting the first price was actually the unusual behavior in most business contexts, it became easier to ask. The fifth habit is eliminating subscriptions I don't actively use. This sounds obvious, but it's shocking how much money leaks through subscriptions people forget about or rarely use. I audited my subscriptions and found I was paying for a gym I hadn't visited in 4 months, 2 streaming services I watched maybe once per month, a software subscription I'd replaced with a free alternative, and a premium music service when the free version would have been fine. Total monthly cost of subscriptions I wasn't really using was about $85. Over a year, that's $1,020 going toward services providing essentially zero value. I cut them all. Now I audit subscriptions quarterly. If I haven't used something in the past 90 days, I cancel it. If I need it again later, I can always resubscribe. But usually I don't need it again. The desire was temporary, or the service was redundant with something else I already had. The subscription model is brilliant for businesses because it creates recurring revenue from people who forget they're paying. It's terrible for consumers who aren't paying attention. Every subscription needs to justify its existence quarterly, or it gets eliminated. This habit extends beyond digital subscriptions. Magazine subscriptions I never read. Membership clubs I joined with good intentions but never used. Delivery services that seemed convenient but actually encouraged overspending. The goal isn't to eliminate all subscriptions. Some provide genuine value. The goal is to eliminate subscriptions that have become invisible expenses, delivering no value but extracting money every month because I haven't taken the time to cancel them. This habit probably saves $1,500 to $2,000 annually, which invested over time becomes another significant chunk of wealth. The sixth habit is using the library instead of buying books, and this extends to other media too. I used to buy books constantly. New releases, books I thought I should read, books that seemed interesting. My shelves filled with books I'd read once or never finished. Each book cost $15 to $30. I was easily spending $100 per month on books. Then I rediscovered the library. Free books, free audiobooks through library apps, free magazines, free movies, the same content I was paying for available at no cost. I started requesting books through the library system. If they didn't have something, they'd often acquire it or get it through interlibrary loan. The selection was vast and the price was zero. This shift saved me roughly $1,200 per year. But it also changed my reading habits for the better. I no longer felt pressure to finish books I wasn't enjoying just because I'd paid for them. If a library book wasn't working for me, I returned it and tried something else. No sunk cost fallacy. I read more widely, took more risks on unfamiliar authors, explored topics I was curious about without financial commitment. For the few books I genuinely wanted to own, I bought them used or waited for sales. But those purchases became rare and intentional rather than constant and impulsive. The library habit extends to other areas too. Libraries often have free passes to museums, free classes, free community events. Resources I was completely unaware of until I started paying attention. The seventh habit is maintaining things before they break instead of replacing them after they fail. Preventive maintenance costs less than emergency replacement, but most people, including my former self, ignore maintenance until something stops working. I changed this pattern across everything I own. Regular oil changes for the car instead of waiting until the engine sounds wrong. Replacing HVAC filters monthly instead of letting them clog and strain the system. Cleaning gutters twice a year instead of waiting for water damage. Servicing appliances according to manufacturer recommendations instead of running them until they die. The upfront cost of maintenance feels like an expense, but it's actually an investment that prevents much larger expenses later. A $50 oil change prevents a $5,000 engine replacement. A $30 filter prevents a $3,000 HVAC repair. A $100 gutter cleaning prevents $10,000 in water damage remediation. The math is overwhelmingly in favor of maintenance, yet most people skip it because the consequences aren't immediate. I started keeping a maintenance calendar. Car service dates, appliance checkups, seasonal home maintenance tasks. Following this calendar religiously has prevented countless expensive repairs and extended the life of everything I own. My car has 180,000 miles and runs perfectly because it's been maintained properly from the beginning. My appliances last years beyond their expected lifespan because they're serviced regularly. This habit probably saves $2,000 to $3,000 annually in avoided repairs and premature replacements. But the real value is in reduced stress. Things don't break unexpectedly. I'm not dealing with emergency repair situations. Everything works reliably because it's maintained properly. The eighth and most impactful habit is automating savings before I see the money. This is the habit that changed everything. I used to save whatever was left at the end of the month, which meant I rarely saved anything because spending expanded to fill available money. I reversed the equation. Now savings happen automatically the day I get paid, before I have a chance to spend it. 20% of every paycheck goes directly to investment accounts. I never see it in my checking account. It's gone before I can spend it. This forced me to live on 80% of my income, which seemed impossible at first but became normal within 2 months. Expenses adjusted downward to match available money. Turns out I didn't need that extra 20%. I just spent it because it was there. This single habit has built wealth faster than anything else I've done. That automated 20% has been invested consistently for years, compounding without interruption, growing without me thinking about it. The account balance went from 0 to 6 figures without feeling like sacrifice because the money was never available to spend in the first place. Here's what makes this habit so powerful. It removes willpower from the equation. I don't have to decide to save each month. I don't have to resist temptation. The system handles it automatically. Saving becomes the default, spending becomes what happens with what's left. Most people have it backward. The psychology shift is profound. When you automate savings first, you stop thinking of your full paycheck as available money. You think of your after savings amount as your actual income. Your lifestyle calibrates to that number. You're not constantly feeling deprived because you're not constantly choosing to save instead of spend. The choice was made once when you set up the automation. After that, it just happens. These 8 habits didn't just make me richer in terms of account balances, though they absolutely did that. They made me richer in ways that matter more. I have less financial stress. I sleep better knowing I can handle emergencies. I have options that most people don't have because I'm not locked into a lifestyle I can't afford. I can make career decisions based on what I want to do rather than what I need to earn. The total financial impact of these habits over 10 years is difficult to calculate precisely because they interact and compound. A conservative estimate, they've saved or earned me over $300,000 compared to my previous patterns. $300,000 from habits that don't feel like deprivation because they're not about saying no to everything. They're about saying yes to what actually matters and no to what doesn't. Here's what I wish someone had told me earlier. Frugality isn't about being cheap. It's about being intentional. It's about controlling money instead of letting money control you. It's about building wealth quietly, while everyone else is performing prosperity they can't afford. The richest decision I ever made wasn't a single investment or career move. It was developing habits that consistently move me toward financial freedom instead of away from it. Small decisions compounded over time create results that look like luck to people who don't understand the process. You don't need a massive income to build wealth. You need habits that work for you instead of against you. These 8 habits work regardless of income level. They've worked for me, and they'll work for anyone willing to implement them consistently. The question isn't whether they work. The question is whether you're willing to do what actually builds wealth instead of what just looks like wealth. Choose carefully.